Give me God of War in God of War Ragnarok can be pretty tough, but with this build being one of the best possible builds you can have, it makes just about any difficulty relatively easy and should set you up nicely for New Game Plus. Starting off with the armor set, since that's what the entire build builds on, the Lunda's armor set is one of the best armors you can obtain in Ragnarok. I knew before using this build that it was a good armor set, I just wasn't aware of how good it is, especially how good it is late game, as I switched to some of the other sets later on, but you guys let me know down in the comments of my best armor sets video that I was definitely sleeping on this one, and you were right. But that's the beauty of Ragnarok, you can make just about any armor in here worth it once it's upgraded. So back to the actual build, the great thing about Lunda's armor is that not only is it boss meltingly powerful, but you can grab it pretty early on and stick with it throughout your entire playthrough without running into really any problems. So Lunda's chest piece gives barehanded, blocking, and parrying a high luck chance to poison enemies and deal bonus damage while lowering their power level, as you can tell by the color of their health bar, which means it also makes the enemies weaker and take even more damage. A lot of good builds in this game would have you mix and match armor sets, but we want to stick with the Lunda's wrist and waist armor pieces to allow our melee attacks against poison enemies to dish out even more damage. Lunda's armor is only obtainable after completing the Reckoning main mission from the Path line of quests, which I believe is the 5th or 6th quest you'll run into. Once you've completed that quest, you should be placed in Freyr's camp, where you can speak to Lunda at Sindri's shop to get a couple of favors, one being Lunda's lost armor and the other being a mysterious orb, which she will spam you with dialogue about every time you walk past her if you don't find that orb. Now that you have the Lunda's lost armor favor, you can travel to the southeastern portion of Vanaheim through the river delta in order to grab the pieces of armor. One piece comes from Noatun's garden, where Kratos can stick his shard into the door to open it up between the two trolls. And then you can boat on over to the cliffside ruins, where you'll see the broken apart bridge. And if you climb up to the ruins on your left, we can find a red chest hidden in the little cubby area containing our armor. And then finally at the Veiled Passage, you'll find your red chest stashed just behind where that poison cloud is coming from. For our relic, we're going to use the Hilt of Dainsleif, which can be obtained after finding the Lost Pages lore in Alfheim's Forbidden Sands at the Elven Sanctum, where we can pick up those lost pages and then return over to Sindri's shop to craft it using the Svent Thorn, which you get during the Lost Treasure favor. This relic is going to be one of the best relics you can have for this particular build, obviously because it adds on to our poison effects, allowing you to slam into the ground and create a poison cloud on the enemy, which will help a lot because our end goal with this build is to keep afflicting poison as well as stun damage to them, because we'll end up taking advantage of that to deal even more damage. Plus, remember that the wrist and waist armor will deal 40% more damage to poisoned enemies with our fists, which also already stacks up stun effects pretty easily, so we're already stacking poison and stun. For enchantments, we're going to use Svartalfheim's set of 3 to increase the stun damage you inflict and is based off of your defense. I'm using Svartalfheim's Honor, being rewarded for the Conscience for the Dead favor, which I believe took place in Alfheim's Cliffside Ruins, Svartalfheim's Fortitude, which I got from a Nornir chest in Muspelheim, and then Svartalfheim's Safety, and this enchantment is rewarded with the Garden for the Dead favor in Vanaheim. If you beat the Crimson Dread boss fight in Vanaheim's Crater, you'll get Vanaheim's Fortitude, and then Vanaheim's Honor and Virtue enchantments are purchasable from Sindri's shop after the Word of Fate and Forging Destiny main path missions. With the Vanaheim set of enchantments, will deal extra melee damage to status afflicted enemies, which if you haven't noticed, we've already built on these status effects like a lot. Enemies are going to non-stop be affected by some sort of status effect, so the Vanaheim enchantments are a no-brainer. For our other enchantments, we're going to use Stunning Fang, an enchantment rewarded to you in the Crater of Vanaheim for completing the Casualties of War favor called the Scroll. This will allow you to form shockwaves after hitting a stunned enemy, which can give Kratos extra stun damage and strength. And then Seal of Runic Storm, just because this enchantment is hard to not include in any build because of its insane bifrost damage, and since we have items in this build that do extra damage on status afflicted enemies, it's going to help us do even more damage, especially when facing multiple enemies because of its crazy AoE type damage. Now for most of our equipment and weapons, it's not going to matter too much what you use since we're mainly sticking to our fists, but you can see what I've got here. I think the most important part is going to be our shield though. You don't necessarily have to parry, I guess. You could mainly stick to just blocking, but I 100% recommend learning to parry and getting good with the timing of the enemy's attacks to parry them, since the game becomes pretty easy after that. I generally go with Rond of the Nine Realms on the shield to slow down time to get some extra breathing room, but it's not really necessary. For Freya, make sure you equip some Sonic Arrow buffs as well as her Poison Cloud ability, Cedar Exhale. So when you're actually playing, the first thing you should do is, just as you normally would, spam your runic attacks, but do it while switching weapons after each attack so that you can build up that bifrost storm that we have from the Seal of Runic Storm. And during all of your fights, you should already know to be spamming square, but you should do it with the sonic arrows to pack on additional stun damage. And whenever her special move is ready, just hold square for her poison ability. After you use those runic attacks, you're going straight Saitama mode with only fists and parries or blocks to stack on some extra poison damage. And from there, it's pretty simple, you're just going to be fisting it out. But that's pretty much it. If you have any additional tips or something you would change in this build, leave it down in the comments. See ya.